Hello everyone, this is the Real Black Utaku. After much preparation and procrastination, I finally bring you the review that I promised you a while ago. Today's review is of Madoka Magica. But not only am I going to be reviewing the series, but this is going to be a side-by-side review of the series and the 3 movies. Without further ado, let's get started. Madoka Magica is about a middle school student named Madoka Kaname, who stumbles across a small creature named Kyubey, who offers to grant her one wish in exchange for a life dedicated to hunting these monsters called witches as a magical girl. We follow Madoka as she struggles with the decision of whether or not to take up on Kyubey's offer, while the mysterious transfer student Homoda Kemi tries to talk her out of making the contract. If you ever decide to watch Madoka Magica, and I'll go ahead and say that right now that I highly recommend you do, don't let the light and fluffy atmosphere of the early episodes deceive you, because this gets really dark very quickly. You see, Madoka Magica is what's called a deconstruction. A deconstruction takes the common elements of a specific genre, in this case Sailor Moon-esque magic girl anime, and puts a more realistic and oftentimes darker twist to them. Very similar to what Evangelion did in the mecha genre and School Days did in the harem. That's right, I said it. Come at me. I remember when I showed Madoka Magica to a friend. I knew what we were in for because I'd seen it once before. However, she did not. And it wasn't until one of the characters ended up fighting it horribly did she realize the true nature of the show. It was hilarious on so many levels. The story itself was excellent, having great writing and was very well paced. The ending is fairly interesting. This really doesn't seem like something you'd expect from Shaft, but more from Studio Gainax, which isn't too surprising since Shaft has worked with Gainax on 3 separate occasions. At first, I wasn't too fond of the ending, but the second time through, I was able to appreciate it a lot more, becoming one of my favorite anime endings. That would be if it actually ended there, but we'll get to that in a bit. The only points I'll take off for the story are for a couple of plot holes I may have nitpicked, but that's all they are, nitpicks. Despite this, the original series gets a score of 9 for its story. The movie series is split up into 3 parts: Beginnings, Kings and Eternal, recapping the original series, and Rebellion being a direct sequel. They are commonly considered to be the Madoka Magica equivalents of the Evangelion rebuild, with Rebellion specifically being compared to the end of Evangelion. Now, since I have yet to see the Evangelion rebuild, I can't probably compare them. However, I can and will compare the Beginnings and Eternal to the Gurren Lagann movies, The Childhood's End and The Lights in the Sky Are Stars respectively, because they both recap their respective series in a fairly similar way. Beginning retells the story from the beginning to the introduction of a witch who causes a lot of problems for the rest of the characters, and Eternal picking up from there to the end of the original series. For the most part, they're just copy and pasted from the original series with a few things taken out. Rebellion is something different. I won't go into any detail of the premise behind Rebellion because that would mean spoiling everything that came before it, but I will make quick mention of the ending, which I can describe in 3 words.
What a twist!
Yes, there's the infamous Rebellion twist, which quite honestly would have caught me by surprise if someone, I'm not going to say any names, Marvin, it didn't unintentionally give a big spoiler towards the ending. And so it took me a second viewing to get a proper understanding of the movie in general. While the movie itself is comparable to the end of Evangelion, I would like to compare the ending of the movie to the Elfen Lied ending, being, in my opinion, fairly satisfying, but is open enough for a sequel, which many say is needed. Then again, I'd argue that Elfen Lied would benefit more from a remake than a sequel. Rebellion needs a sequel, whether it be a 4th movie or another 12-episode series. I don't care, as long as it gets done and it's done well. Madoka Magica movies get a slightly lower score of 8.5 for the story. Madoka Magica has a fairly large cast, but there are only 6 that really matter. First, we have the main heroine, Madoka. As I said before, she's given the opportunity to do great things, and despite being average and nothing special in any way, she has the potential to do a lot more. I'm gonna be honest that she's probably the weakest of the main cast. Madoka's best friend Saika is outgoing and cheerful, but has a strong sense of responsibility. Ami's a veteran magic girl who acts as a mentor and a role model for Madoka and Saika on their journey to become magical girls. She's kind, almost motherly, but can kick major ass, as has been shown several times throughout the franchise. Kyoko is another magical girl who is introduced about a third of the way in. She's selfish and snobby, but looking at her backstory, it's fairly justified. Next is Kyubei, who offers to grant a single wish in order to form contracts with new magical girls. He's kind of the cute animal sidekick, but something just doesn't seem right about him. You just see it in his eyes. Last, and most certainly not least, is Homura, who's my favorite character in the series, and just misses out on my top 10 favorite anime characters list. Hindsight, I probably should have put her above Mikasa and Pino, but it's a little late for that now. She's got the most depth, the best development, and has great mystery surrounding her character. Let me remind you that this shit is dark. So don't get too attached to Ian's characters, because there are no promises that any of them will make it out alive. This isn't like Attack on Titan, or Guilty Crown, where for the most part, the extras and supporting cast are the ones who die. This is more like 11 Eyes, where not even the main cast is safe. People will die in various ways, from to and even I guess that's what happens when you have Gen Ubuchi holding the reins. Despite this, I consider this cast to be prime shipping material. And this isn't quite like who to ship with the main character, like, say, Code Geass, the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, or hell, Fairy Tail. It's more in general who gets shipped with who. There are two popular ships, but I have seen a third come up. And, honestly, I'd be lying if I said I didn't do a little bit of shipping here myself. Unfortunately, the characters are the weakest part of the show, because I would have liked to see a little bit more development from them, but each of them have played their respective roles well enough. For that, the characters get a score of 8. The characters are more or less the same in the movies, with a few exceptions. Unfortunately, many of the bits I cut out of the series for the first 2 movies involved Mommy's development. But they made up for this by giving her more development in Rebellion. Homura also gets some development in Rebellion, but whether or not said development is good or not is up for debate. Finally, there's a 6th magical girl who's introduced in Rebellion named Nagisa. Insert Clannad and her Evangelion references here. She's cute, but really doesn't do much to advance the story. When all is said and done, the Madoka Magica movies get an even lower score of 7.5 for the characters. Madoka Magica is produced by Shaft, who did an amazing job animating F, and by some miracle, managed to keep Gainax from screwing with the animation like they tend to do with the Sega Critical World. You can see a lot of trademarks of Shaft in Madoka Magica, from the effective use of lighting, trippy imagery, a cameraman with ADD level of my own, and their signature head tilts. One thing I want to bring up about the animation involves the witches. Not only are the Lavins they hide within trippy as hell, but each one of them has a specific design and style unique to the individual, which is a touch I really liked. My main gripe with the animation is that with character design. I just thought they were just too moe for my tastes, and it didn't work so well with the tone of the show. Granted, one could argue that Higurashi has the same issue with its character designs, but I actually thought that worked in the show's favor, adding to its already creepy atmosphere. I was able to stand them my second time through, but it still bothered me a bit. And overall, the animation was great, worthy of an 8.5. Getting the internal, primarily reused footage from the original series, much like other recaps, like Gurren Lagann episode 16 and the first 11 episodes of Shuffle Memories. However, what separates these from them is that even though they use footage from the original series, there are additional touches added in. On top of all that, there are some things that are new to the movies. First off, the transformation sequences were redone and looked really good. Second, and most impressive, is actually seen in Eternal. Just look at these screenshots right here. The top one being from episode 9 of the original series, the bottom one being from the exact same scene in Eternal. This scene was reanimated from scratch and looked amazing. The highlight of the animation, however, is seen in Rebellion, which is easily the best quality animation I have seen come from Shaft, even though I do prefer the relatively simple style seen in the app. One last thing to mention about the animation Rebellion is the transformation scene, which I can only describe as transformation via interpretive dance. Watch the scene for yourself to see what I'm talking about. Animation is the only segment where these movies were able to outscore the original series, getting an even higher score of 9. The soundtrack for Madoka Magica is amazing. It was composed by Kazuya, whose only other work I've heard being in Sword Art Online, but has also known for other soundtracks like Fate Zero and the Kata no Kyokai movies. It uses a mix of traditional and exotic sounding instruments, along with a Latin choir, giving great feel to both the fantastical and the eerie scenes. My first experience with the opening is fairly similar to that of the Elf Lead ending, it clashing horribly with the overall tone of the show, and being unnecessary emotional whiplash. And while my thoughts on Be Your Girl have not changed, my thoughts on Connect have changed drastically. At first glance, it is very deceiving, but upon further investigation, it has subtle symbolism and foreshadowing in both the lyrics and the visuals. Whoever put this opening together, someone needs to give that man a medal, because this shit is brilliant! There are a total of 3 ending themes in the original series, if you exclude the one episode that uses Connect as its ending. The first ending is only used for the first few episodes. Its end is completely forgettable. And there is a third ending used for episode 9, being memorable only because of the context in which it was played. The most memorable ending from the series, the one you listen to right now, and quite frankly the only one anyone gives a shit about, is ending to Magica, which is also from time to time used as a battle theme. Though the animation used for the ending itself was rather lackluster, it is still worth a listen. I'm going to give Madoka Magica's soundtrack a score of 8.5. For the most part, the soundtrack of the movies contain remixes of songs from the original soundtrack, along with some new pieces added in. For the most part, I didn't think much of them, with the exception of this one song called Absolute Configuration. But that might just be because of the scene of which it was played. Strangely enough, the movies have openings. There are actually 2 openings between the 3 movies. Both of them take a very similar approach to the original opening, complete with the same group performing the songs. Beginnings and Eternal share an opening, while Rebellion has its own. While they are both as fitting as the original opening, they didn't have the subtlety or the charm that the original opening had. Though I will go on record and say that Colorful, the opening to Rebellion, is definitely the better of the 2. On a side note, I never thought I'd ever be creeped the fuck out because of cake. But Rebellion found a way. All things considered, the movies are able to match the original series score of 8.5 for the soundtrack. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't too fond of Madoka Magica when I first watched it. I liked it a fair bit, but it wasn't until I watched it again where I really got to fall in love with it. It has now become one of my favorite anime. Granted, I haven't seen any magical anime before or since, so I wasn't able to properly appreciate the deconstruction aspects of the series. But I just love the concept of the story, the ideas presented, and the darker atmosphere. Not to mention how well executed it all was. I give the series an enjoyment score of 9. I'll admit that I found beginnings boring and Eternal marginally better. And I recommend you watch the series and skip the first 2 movies entirely. However, Rebellion is a great movie, but left me wanting more. Despite that, the Madoka Magica movies get an enjoyment score of 8.5. Overall, I give Madoka Magica, the series, and the movies final scores of 8.6 and 8.4 respectively. If you're able to handle the dark and twisted nature of the series, I cannot recommend it enough. For alternate anime recommendations, I first pointed to the obvious Neon Genesis Evangelion for being a great deconstruction in its own right, along with a movie sequel that almost makes them worse. And second recommendation going to Steins Gate, being another example of masterful storytelling along with some other similarities it has with Madoka Magica. Between them, I'm sure you'll find something to your liking. Go ahead and tell me down in the comments of your thoughts on Madoka Magica and some of the points I brought up here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go check my vlogging channel out Absolutely Trolling by clicking right here or in the link in the description. While you're at it, you can go ahead and click right here or in the description and to go to the most recent podcast on the Otaku Squad where we spend an hour discussing Madoka Magica. Just be warned, we do go into heavy spoiler territory. Unfortunately, I am going on hiatus once this goes up, because my computer needs to get some work done, and I'm not going to be available until I get it back. But don't you worry, I'll get some more material out to you guys as soon as I get it back. Until then, your real Blacky Tucky signing out. See ya.